Within our color tree, we have our neutral axis in the middle of the color wheel. As we move further away from the center neutral axis, we get to a more saturated color. The third dimension is hue, and that represents color as either being bluer, redder, yellower, or greener. Blue, red, yellow, or green. Okay? As I remove this piece of color space, you can now see it quite easily where the neutral axis shows us a more desaturated, less colored row of colors. And as we travel away from that center axis, we get a more rich, saturated blue color. Okay? The white effect of it is going to make us lighter, and the black on the bottom is going to make us darker. So light, dark, desaturated, and saturated. And then again, the third dimension is in describing the hue. Now what we're going to do is break this apart and take a look at our graphs. Okay? To start out with lightness, we're going to represent our black at the bottom, just like we showed on our Munsell color wheel. Our white is at the top. And when we add these together, in the example of our blue color we're working with today, this is exactly the shade of gray that we end up with by adding the proper amount of white and black together. Okay? If we were going to make this color lighter, we would have to add white to lighten it. So as we add white to this, we make it a little lighter, we make it a little lighter, lighter yet, and as you can see, as we add more white, it just continually gets much lighter as we go. Okay? Now if we jump to the other side of the color family here, we get the black. And just a little bit of black is going to make this color look darker and darker and darker. And it just doesn't take a whole lot of black, and you can see how far we've moved this thing away from the neutral color that we started out with. So once again, white makes our color lighter, black will take our color and make it darker. Now jumping into the saturation, we've got a blue color. And the way that it's represented is by having the proper amount of each of these added. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save some of this color over here for our exercise. This is an exact representation of how much magenta and blue are in this formula. We're going to represent our magenta right here and our green shade blue down here. Okay? Equal parts of those are what gave us this chromatic colorant. Now once we add these together, what you're going to notice is we should have a blue that's pretty close to what we were supposed to have to start with. This now has the neutral and the chromatic colorants all added equally together. What we started off with on our prospector chip is this color right here, and you can see that we're very close right now. Okay? Alright, I'm going to put this color in the middle of this. We're going to see how we can affect it. So if we were going to take this blue and we wanted to make it less saturated, or desaturated is another good way to describe it, we would have to take equal parts of the gray that we made earlier and we would add to it. And as you see, we can slightly make it more desaturated. We can make it even more desaturated. And as we add more of the gray, we're just making it travel toward the neutral side of this color family, to where all of a sudden it gets so gray that you almost don't recognize it as being blue anymore. Now if we want to increase saturation, we're going to add the equal amounts of each of our blue and red that we've saved here earlier, and we're going to do the opposite thing here. We're going to make it much cleaner, richer, more saturated. What we're actually doing now is we're taking this color and moving it further away from the neutral axis. And you can see what it's doing is making it a much more saturated color. So the lesson learned here is how to desaturate by adding the neutral colorant, and how to increase saturation by adding just the pure chromatic colorants. Now the other lesson that can be learned here is how we can desaturate and lighten at the same time. In order to do that, we would have to take white. If we take white to this color, you can see how we can make it travel to the lightness side and desaturate it at the same time. It gives it a very milky, chalky look. So now what we've got is a desaturated, lighter color. If we jump down here on the black side of things, we would do the opposite of that. We would make it darker and desaturated. So just a little bit of black, you can already see that it's starting to make it desaturated. It's also going to move it darker, and it just doesn't take a lot of black to completely take this color and move it away from the blue so far that it doesn't even represent blue anymore. Okay? So desaturated and lighter, and desaturated and darker. All right? Within our chromatic colorants, to add to those, if we add our magenta to this, what we're going to represent now is having it more saturated. We're moving it away from the neutral. It's going to be more saturated, but you're seeing how quickly it's moving it to the red side. We're now affecting the hue. This is making a saturation and a hue adjustment. And very quickly you can see how that actually looks very purple. It went so far to the red side. So it increased saturation but took it to the red side. If we were to add this blue to it down here, what we now would notice is it's going to make it increased in saturation also, but it's going to travel it toward the blue side instead of the red side. You can see it's getting to be a much more rich, saturated color. Okay? So, increased saturation, either equally with both equal amounts in the middle, or in this example to the red side, or the blue side, depending on which way we wanted the hue to travel. Okay? By looking at our Munsell wheel one more time, just to reflect on what we've learned from this, we've increased saturation, we've affected the lightness, we've affected the darkness, we've desaturated, and once again the hue travels around the outside.